The people who end up with real savings are not earning more than you. In most cases, they are not even trying harder. What separates someone with $40,000 sitting in an account from someone with $4,000 on the same income is not a single decision. It is roughly 10 small ones, made once, years ago, and never looked at again. This video is not about budgeting. It is about the specific, verifiable cost of not paying attention and what happens when you finally do. Start with the largest number on this list. According to AIA's most recent Your Driving Costs study, the average new vehicle loses roughly $4,334 in value every single year it is owned. That is not a hypothetical. That is the measured depreciation on the average new car, averaged across 9 vehicle categories and 45 models. Here is the part that does not get said out loud often enough. The person who trades in every 3 years and rolls the remaining balance into the next loan is not participating in depreciation once. They are re-entering it on purpose, on a schedule, for the rest of their driving life. Each new purchase resets the clock to the steepest part of the curve, the part where a vehicle loses value fastest and locks in another several years of paying that rate. The monthly payment on the new loan feels like progress. It is actually a fee for staying permanently at the most expensive point of a depreciation curve that every car eventually has to travel through. A 3-year-old car has already absorbed the worst of that curve. Someone else paid for the steep part. The person who buys used or who buys new and simply keeps the car sidesteps roughly $4,300 a year in value that would otherwise disappear into someone else's balance sheet. This is not a claim about avoiding car ownership entirely. It is a claim about which 3-year window in a car's life you choose to own it during. Over 10 years, avoiding that one repeating decision is worth $43,340 in direct terms. If that same amount had gone into an investment account, earning 8% a year instead of into a dealership's depreciation schedule, it grows to $62,785. That is not a rounding error. That is a second car, paid for in cash, funded entirely by a habit most people never think to question. Ask someone what they spend on subscriptions monthly, and they will guess low. Research from C&R Research puts the average self-estimate at roughly $86 a month. Then have them go line by line through an actual bank statement, streaming, software, apps, memberships, delivery services, and the real number lands closer to $219 a month. That gap, about $133 every month, is not a memory problem. It is a design outcome. Annual billing hides a monthly cost inside a single once-a-year charge that is easy to forget happened at all. Free trials are built to convert silently, with the cancellation date buried several screens deep, sometimes behind a phone call that never gets made. Auto-renewal is the default everywhere, and cancellation is rarely built with the same ease as sign-up. In 2025, a federal court struck down a proposed rule that would have required companies to make cancellation as easy as sign-up. As of this year, regulators have reopened that rule-making process, which means the rules of this game may change again. But for now, the friction is still there by design, and the burden of remembering still sits entirely with the person paying. $133 a month is $1,596 a year, money leaving an account for services that, in a meaningful number of cases, are not being used at all. Left alone for 10 years, that is $15,960 gone. Invested instead, it becomes $23,121. The fix is not complicated. It is an audit once, followed by the willingness to actually cancel what the audit finds, and then a habit of checking back periodically before the list quietly regrows. Consumer Reports has run blind taste tests on grocery staples for years. Cookies, salsa, canned vegetables, condiments, dairy, cooking oils. Trained tasters, no labels, no brand loyalty in the room. The consistent finding, repeated across multiple rounds of testing, is that in the majority of these categories, testers cannot reliably tell the store brand from the name brand, and in a meaningful share of cases, they prefer the store brand outright. Store brands run roughly 25% cheaper on average, sometimes considerably more depending on the category. That premium is not paying for a better product in most of these categories. It is paying for advertising, packaging design, and shelf placement. Costs the name brand has to recover somewhere. And the somewhere is the price tag on every unit sold. The product inside the package, in a blind test, often cannot justify the gap on its own. For a household spending $800 a month on groceries, a 25% premium works out to $200 a month, $2,400 a year. 10 years of paying that premium is $24,000 spent on branding rather than food. Redirected into an investment account instead, that same money becomes $34,768. Nobody has to switch every item in the cart to capture most of this. The categories where blind tests show the smallest gap are the easiest place to start. Extended warranties carry some of the highest profit margins of anything sold at retail, commonly 50 to 80% according to multiple industry analyses. That number alone should raise a question. If a meaningful share of products actually needed the repairs the warranty covers, the retailer could not price the warranty this profitably and still expect people to buy it in volume. The margin exists precisely because most products do not fail during the covered window, and the retailer knows the failure rate better than the customer standing at the register does. Consumer Reports has a simple rule of thumb here. When the cost of a warranty exceeds roughly 20% of the item's purchase price, the math has usually stopped favoring the buyer. The warranty is not protecting you from risk so much as it is monetizing your overestimate of that risk, a gap between perceived failure rates and actual ones that researchers have documented directly. The average household spends something in the neighborhood of $450 a year on these plans across electronics, appliances, and other purchases. Over 10 years, that is $4,500 in direct terms, or $6,519 if it had been invested instead. None of this means protection plans are always wrong, particularly on large, complex appliances where a single repair can be expensive. It means the pricing on most retail extended warranties is built to profit from fear, not to fairly price risk, and the two are easy to confuse at the checkout counter. The fitness industry has an internal name for the point in the calendar when attendance from New Year's resolutions starts collapsing. Multiple industry trackers put the share of gym memberships that go largely unused at around 2/3, a figure treated as directional rather than exact, but consistently repeated year over year across different surveys. The average monthly membership fee now runs close to $69, according to Health and Fitness Association benchmarking data, up from prior years. Do the arithmetic on someone visiting twice a month. That is closer to $35 per visit, more than most boutique class drop-ins, for a membership that was supposed to be the economical option. The gap here is not about willpower, and it is not really about fitness at all. It is a subscription that keeps charging every month regardless of whether the underlying behavior, actually showing up, ever happens. At $69 a month, that is $828 a year. 10 years of an unused membership is $8,280 in direct cost, or $11,995 invested. A pair of running shoes and a free training app cover the same cardiovascular ground for a fraction of the price. For anyone whose actual pattern is 2 visits a month rather than the daily habit the membership was purchased to represent. The expected value of a lottery ticket is public information, published and auditable. Depending on the specific game, a ticket returns somewhere between 50 and 65 cents for every dollar spent, averaged across every prize tier, including the jackpot. That is the actual mathematically expected outcome, not the dream outcome. The expected one, the number that would show up if the same ticket were purchased millions of times over. The habit of framing lottery tickets as ordinary entertainment, comparable to a movie ticket, misses something important. A movie ticket delivers the experience it promises with certainty every single time. A lottery ticket delivers with near certainty a partial loss wrapped around a probability of a life-changing win so small it barely registers in the math at all. Both can be a legitimate form of entertainment. Only one of them is honest in the moment of purchase about the price of admission. At roughly $320 a year, a common estimate for regular players, that habit costs $3,200 over a decade in direct terms, or $4,636 if redirected into an index fund instead. This is not a judgment about anyone who enjoys playing occasionally for the fun of it. It is simply the number, stated plainly, the way it actually appears in the published math behind the game. For years, the advice here was simple. Cancel cable, switch to streaming, save close to $1,000 a year. In 2026, that advice needs an asterisk. Average cable bills have climbed to somewhere between $128 and $147 a month once fees are included. But the streaming side of the ledger has changed too. A household stacking 4 or 5 ad-free platforms can now spend $90 to over $100 a month, in some cases landing close to what cable used to cost in the first place. The mechanism here has not gone away. It has relocated. The same subscription creep that inflated the cable bill in the first place, paying every month for access that goes mostly unused, has quietly rebuilt itself inside the streaming stack. One platform at a time, each one easy to justify on its own. Someone who cancels cable and then accumulates 5 separate streaming subscriptions over the following 2 years has not actually solved the problem. They have moved it somewhere less visible. The actual savings only show up for someone who stays deliberate about it, picking 2 or 3 services that cover what they genuinely watch, then auditing that choice periodically rather than letting it silently grow the way the original cable package once did. Done that way, the gap between a full cable bill and a disciplined streaming selection is close to $90 a month, $1,080 a year. 10 years of that discipline is $10,800 directly, or $15,645 invested. The content was never the expensive part. The inattention was, and it turns out inattention can survive a cord cutting entirely intact. The FDA requires a generic medication to contain the same active ingredient, in the same dosage, delivered through the same route, meeting the same bioequivalence standard as the brand name drug it replaces. This is not marketing language. It is a regulatory requirement enforced through mandatory testing before a generic version is ever allowed onto a pharmacy shelf. According to FDA estimates, confirmed across multiple healthcare sources, generics run roughly 80 to 85% cheaper than their brand name equivalents. A well-known example makes the scale of this concrete. A common brand name cholesterol medication can run around $350 a month, while its generic equivalent, the identical active ingredient at the identical dose, can run $3 to $8 a month at a standard pharmacy. The chemistry does not change between the 2 bottles. The price does by a factor of dozens. For a household managing 1 or more maintenance medications, switching every eligible prescription to its generic equivalent saves a representative figure of around $1,200 a year. Over 10 years, that is $12,000 kept rather than spent, or $17,384 if invested along the way. The only action required here is a single question asked at the pharmacy counter, or the next appointment. Is a generic available for this? And if not yet, when does the patent allow one? Phone upgrade habits have actually been shifting in recent years. Recent industry surveys show only around a quarter of people still trade in their phone every 2 years on schedule, with most now holding devices closer to 3 or 4 years before replacing them. If that describes you already, the math below does not really apply, and that is worth acknowledging directly rather than pretending everyone still runs on the old 2-year clock. For the remaining share who do still upgrade on the traditional schedule, the device payment portion of a phone plan typically runs $35 to $45 a month, financed on hardware that, based on current data, remains fully functional for closer to 4 to 5 years in most cases of normal use. Upgrading a full year or 2 before that functional life is exhausted means paying for a second device during a stretch when the first one was still doing the job it was bought to do. For that specific group, the unnecessary cost lands around $420 a year in early upgrade payments. Over 10 years, that is $4,200 directly, or $6,084 invested. The fix here is not complicated. It is simply letting the device reach the actual end of its functional life before replacing it, rather than replacing it on a schedule set by a carrier promotion timed to a launch event. A commission-based financial advisor is paid when a client buys a specific financial product. This is not necessarily a character flaw in any individual advisor, and most are not acting in bad faith. It is a structural incentive built into how the relationship is compensated, and it shapes which products tend to get recommended, regardless of any single advisor's personal intentions. The clearest version of this shows up in fund fees. An index fund charging roughly 0.2% a year, and an actively managed fund charging around 1% a year sound similar on paper.